Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. What a treat. We are going to get to visit with Jan Markowitz. You know her as the program director here and music director here at The Light. You have been in Christian radio for how many years, Jan?
32. I started when I was 5.
And obviously. And recently announced that you're going to be retiring.
Yes.
So first of all, tears rolling down my cheeks. Second, let's go back and let's just talk about this remarkable career that you've had. So let's begin. How in the world did you first get into broadcasting? Was this something that you always wanted to do?
You know, it was all God, really. I mean, I always was an entertainer in school, high school, so on, always involved in drama and singing and things like that. Always wanted to be an actress, but I didn't like where everything was going. As I got older, you know, things were turning in Hollywood and the way things were, and I didn't want any part of that. So I just kind of laid that aside, and I always enjoyed doing hair. So I ended up being a cosmetologist. But I developed allergies and couldn't do it anymore, so I kept doing various on-the-job training type things that God brought my way until this Christian radio station. Now at the time, mind you, I was working as a McDonald's manager. I think I've done just about anything you can think of. And just since becoming a Christian, had this longing for something, but I didn't know what it was. Like God was calling me to something, and I had other fellow believers telling me the same thing, that they felt that God was calling me to something very specific and special. But, you know, I didn't want to say that because I thought they would think, well, who does she think she is? You know, but I felt that for a long time. And the yearning was getting stronger and stronger, and I just cried out to God, and I said, what is it? God, show me, because I wasn't satisfied with anything else I was doing. And this Christian radio station moves in a block away from where I'm living.
And where was that?
In Mercer, Pennsylvania. And loved it, listened to it all the time, loved the DJs. And it turned out that one of the guys that was working at McDonald's with me, he worked there part-time. And he said, Jan, come on down, I'll introduce you to everybody. So I was so excited. I went down, and they were having a share-a-thon, and they asked me if I wanted to help, and I did. I had having no idea that they were going to put me on the air.
I was going to say, help how? Answering phones?
Yeah, basically.
And they put you on the air.
They put me on the air. Well, I always loved sharing about the Lord. You couldn't shut me up. I did that no matter what job I had, where I was, and loved music, Christian music. I started just sharing about the Lord and why people should give, you know, to keep that ministry going, how important it was. And people started calling, wanting to know who I was. Who is that girl? Apparently they liked me, liked what I said. And then an opening came on a weekend, and the manager said to me, good old Mr. Z, we called him. His name was Mr. Zippe, wonderful man of God. He said, Jan, you could do it. Do you want the job? And I thought, well, with God's help, all these other jobs he's given me has been on-the-job training, and I was, you know, as long as you take that step of faith and not be afraid to try, with God's help, I thought, yeah, I could. And so that's how it all started on a Saturday morning.
There's so much more to broadcasting than talking and being able to share your heart about the Lord with people.
Yes.
There's just the nitty-gritty grunge stuff of being able to do math and back time and time things out and talk music up to the wall. And all of you got all on-the-job training for all of that.
Yes, and back in the day, when I started out, back in the early 80s, we actually had to cut and splice tapes, real tapes, when we did our commercials and bring things together and edit that way.
How about vinyl? Did you use actual records? And you screech them back and then know just how far to screech them back so you can talk until the singing starts.
Yes, and that way I'm so glad we have computers today.
Oh, man, yes.
So much easier editing today. It's amazing. That was an answer to my prayer, by the way. I prayed that a long time ago.
Thanks. Many people are saying thank you for that. These young kids today have no idea, do they?
Oh, my goodness. No idea whatsoever. And, you know, it was just God. And God laid it upon Mr. Zippe's heart. Apparently he saw something in me that made him, you know, hire me and get me a license, even though I didn't go to broadcasting school, communication school, like most people have to. And, you know.
And get a radio license, or at least a third-degree radio operator's license. Did you learn all, and I don't mean to belabor this, but I'm fascinated by it. Did you learn on the air how to be doing that, or were you practicing off the air or a little of both?
I learned on the air.
Oh, my.
Yes, he just threw me in there and helped me out each day and told me what I was doing wrong or what I could do better, and was teaching me, yeah.
Well,
and I listened to tapes. You listen to yourself afterwards and you go,
yes.
Oh, boy, do I sound
terrible.
terrible.
Don't do that anymore.
Well, no, actually, it's a good thing to listen to yourself because you see things to do and not to do. And as you can tell, I have improved over the years.
Oh, my. You've always been, since I've listened to you for, I won't say how far we go back. But, oh, my, always so friendly on the air. You're so engaging. You feel like somebody's best friend, that they turn you on and you're just right there. And you feel like, and you know, because I know you, you really do. When you're telling people you're praying for them, that's not some throw-off comment. No. But you're right. You listen to yourself and you really do figure out things that you should never do again.
Right.
Or habits that you didn't know you had.
Right.
And it's painful, isn't it?
Yes, it can be. And plus, I was very nervous. So you could probably hear me being nervous. I mean, I'm just learning for the first time to work these controls, and I'm trying to talk and think about what I'm going to say, what I'm saying it, and got a lot to think about.
And for someone who, you're a talker, I'm a talker, for people who talk, to learn how to say something in fewer words is always a real exercise.
Oh, yeah.
Just economy of words is tough and takes practice. And I can't believe they made you do that live and on the air.
Well, you know, it all worked out.
Yes, it did. So let's go back. I mean, obviously you were a Christian at this point.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
What about that? Let's find out more about your Christian testimony.
Okay.
Because you have always been so open about your faith, and in not a pushy way, just in just a sharing way. Like you've found, if you've read a good book or seen a good movie, you're going to recommend that to people. How much more?
Oh, yeah.
That, oh my goodness, let me introduce you to my very best friend.
Yes. Well,
when did that happen?
Well, you know, whenever you realize what a sinner you are, I always thought, well, I'm not that bad. I don't steal. I didn't murder somebody, you know, things like that. But let's face it, we all sin. We all told little white lies, as we want to call them, and, you know, done things that we're not happy with ourselves for doing. But it actually was, I don't know how many people know this. I think I've shared this before, but I had been married before and I was divorced, got married at a very young age. And we both were very young, didn't know what we were getting into. Ended up in a divorce, and I basically just hit rock bottom. I was invited to go to a weekend retreat. I mean, I always believed in the Lord, always believed in Jesus. But it was like, for the first time, I really realized how much I really did need him and what he did for me, the sacrifice he, you know, not just watching a movie on TV, but, you know, really, there was no hope for me had he not died for me. And I was just so grateful to him. And I just broke down and cried. And I said, Lord, you've not been Lord of my life. And there's a difference. You know, I didn't have a personal relationship with him. He wasn't Lord of my life. That's the difference in just having the head knowledge, just believing. So I asked him, come into my heart, forgive me of my sins. And I said, if there's any way you can use me, a divorced person.
Oh, my.
Anybody that could use, if you could use me, God, in some way to bring glory to you, then would you please do that? Never thinking that he would ever use me in Christian radio. I never even heard of Christian radio at the time. And here he had those plans for me.
About how many years from that point to stepping behind a microphone and talking about it? How many years went by?
Oh, that was several years, because I was divorced like in 76, I believe, or 77, somewhere around there. And it wasn't until the early 80s that happened. So there was a few years in between, because I had a lot of the Word to learn. I needed to learn more about the Word before I go on the air talking about the Word and teaching it. And also, you know, just had to get some things changed in my life.
That's my point. There's so many times that a person has a complete turnaround and they find Jesus and he begins to do his work in them. But we tend to put them behind a microphone or in a pulpit maybe a little too soon.
No,
while
God
they're
didn't.
still a baby Christian with so much to learn. And then, so many things can go wrong
Yes, yes.
at that point.
No, he would not allow that. I had the yearning for many years, but he was maturing me. Not that I have arrived.
Oh, none of it. We're all every day. It's a journey.
But it was a lot. I went through a lot and learned a lot of the Word and studying it and going to church, not only Sunday mornings, but Sunday nights and Wednesday night Bible studies. And I was just learning and taking it all in, soaking it in. And God was preparing me, and through wonderful Christian friends that He brought into my life, it was just, I had a lot of journey to go through.
Not only speaking, but singing. When did that begin?
Well, I've always sung. I was always in Glee Club in elementary school. The Watson sisters were always singing. And it just kind of carried on, but started actually singing for the Lord once I became a Christian. My husband and I, when I got remarried, my husband was a Christian, and we just started going out and singing in nursing homes and ministering to the people, because I felt like these dear people, this is their last opportunity to learn about Jesus, and then they're going to pass on. So we would go and just minister and sing. And then when my father passed away, I kind of quit singing. When I met my husband, Mark, he got me back into singing again. And he encouraged me. And so he started sending things out to churches and so on, and sending my tapes. God used him to get me started, really, singing. And so I started singing at women's conferences, mother-daughter banquets, things like that. God kind of just made it all happen.
So he sort of has been a manager for you in a way?
Yes, he has.
What a good team. What brought you to Ohio?
Well, I was raised in Ohio. I was born in Fort Benning, Georgia, but my father, when he got out of the Army, they moved back up here because that's where he was from. So I grew up in Warren, Ohio, but I moved to Pennsylvania later on after I had married. That's where I resided in Mercer for several years until our radio station got sold. And then God moved me here to Akron at WHLO, where you first met me.
Where we met.
Yes.
So it's not that easy to hop around. I mean, radio is not that easy of a job to get into. You have somehow been able to step in. Not very many. I would bet you're the only who has gone from a McDonald's management position to a radio position.
Yes.
But then you were also able to go from radio position to radio position.
Right.
And I've heard God doesn't move you from place to place. He moves you from people to people.
Yes.
You recently wrote one of the most beautiful paragraphs, maybe, longer than a paragraph, of talking to all the people who've been a part of your life through this journey. Do you want to talk about your WHLO days, and maybe hats off to some of those folks?
Oh, sure. I mean, Gary Meeks was the manager who hired me, and, I'm so grateful to him, and Ed Bostick, of course, who was the program director. And it was so funny because I was working, when the radio station in Mercer had been sold, I didn't think I'd ever get back in radio again, so I was thinking about going back to school. And Ed had hired me part-time. There wasn't a full-time position. So I was working there part-time and working at a daycare, and I was getting sick. I was catching everything that these little 3-year-olds would catch. And I remember Ed saying to me, Jan, I got to get you here full-time. He says, those kids are killing you.
Can't lose your voice.
I know.
For one thing. Yes, and then if you've got every little flu bug that goes by because of the children, that would be rough.
Yes. So fortunately, there was a full-time position that opened up in the morning, and I ended up on the morning show with Ed Bostick. So, God opened those doors too.
Yep.
Everything was a stepping stone to the next thing that God had.
And you really see that how one thing prepared you for the next.
Yes, definitely. I see God's hand in it all the way. And of course, Brian Brooks, when Ed left Brian Brooks and I became on the morning show team, and a great guy, he was always treated me very well, and we had fun together.
Wonderful folks.
Yeah.
We need to take a very short break. We'll be back with Jan Markowitz after these words. You're listening to Our Community.